it sounds like you're ready to level up your skills with Laravel. This is positively the series for you. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to visit laravel.com, and if we go to the documentation, let's check out the installation guide. Now, you have two ways to install Laravel, but we'll stick with the simplest approach for now. Now, just make sure on your system you have PHP at least 5.5.9 installed, as well as some of these extensions. And you very likely do, so you don't need to worry about that. If we switch to a terminal, or in my case, I have a program called iterm2 installed, you can run php-v to figure out, 1, if you have PHP installed, and 2, what the version is. Okay, next, you'll learn about this new tool called Composer. This is basically a bedrock of modern PHP development, and we'll go over all of the essentials. Don't worry about it too much, though. It's just a dependency manager. So let's switch over real quick and make sure we have that installed. If we go to Getting Started, installation, well, if you're on Windows, go over here. Otherwise, let's check Mac. And yeah, here's how you can install Composer locally, or I prefer global, so we can use this one right here. So you're just going to copy this bit and paste it into the terminal, like so. Now in my case, I've already done this, so I will cancel out. But the important thing is, once that runs, you should be able to open a new tab and run Composer, and you'll see all of these various options here. So yeah, this gives you an easy way to install any number of packages you might need. Everything from Laravel itself, to maybe some package that helps you out with testing or modifying images or creating dummy values. There are literally thousands of packages you can pull in through Composer. Okay, so we got that. Let's go back. Next, Laravel offers a little installer we can use. And basically what this translates to is I can now run Laravel new my project. And that will very quickly whip up a fresh installation of the framework. So we're going to use Composer to pull that in. And notice I have Composer Global. That means we're going to pull this in, but make sure it's available everywhere on my system, rather than limiting it to the current project. Okay, so we will run that. And now remember, you only have to run this one time, basically ever, beyond updating it. Okay, the only final step is any dependencies we install globally with Composer. So we want to make sure we add that to our path so that we can, in fact, run something like Laravel, and our machine will know to look in that bin directory for this executable. So how do we add this to our path? Well, you can add it in a number of locations. So on my Mac, I could put it, for example, in my home directory in a file called bashrc, or one called bash profile. Or if you're using Z shell, you could do zshellrc. It's up to you. Just open one of those files. And if you scroll down to the bottom, and you can see it looks like a few programs have already updated our path here automatically. But yeah, you would just add something like this. Export path equals this path to our bin directory. And then you notice above where it says colon and then $path. Think of that as just your way of saying anything else that is already in your path. So I will paste that in. And that's it. So I've already done this, so I'm going to close out. But yeah, just open up a new tab. And if you run Laravel, you should see the installer. So notice this command new creates a new Laravel application. Laravel new project. Now notice all of these things that are being installed, those are being pulled in through Composer. So what this means is, and I'm going to scroll up, Laravel is custom. It has lots of what you would call first-party components, but of course it leverages the community. So it pulls in PHP Unit. PHP Unit pulls in Prophecy. It pulls in tons of various tools, Symfony/YAML, tons of things here to make Laravel the best possible framework. In the past, there was a tendency for every framework team to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. They would all create their own logging functionality or kernel or debugger or things like that. And they were all widely inconsistent with one another. But now we can have one tool that's the best at its job, and then each framework can pull in that dependency, which then frees up time to focus on more unique aspects of the framework. Okay, so let's see. Application is ready. Let's check it out. cd into my project, list the files with ls, and there we go. Now, generally, my editor of choice is called Vim, but this is a beginner series, so I think it would be easier if we use Sublime. Now, if you have that installed, you know that you can run Sublime period to launch it. Otherwise, just open the folder within your editor of choice. And here we go. This is what a fresh installation of Laravel looks like. Great job. Welcome back. Now, let's clarify something immediately. I'm well aware that this could feel overwhelming at first, especially if this is your first framework. Maybe up until now, you just had a functions folder and a handful of PHP files that would display some HTML and do a bit of processing, a bit of form processing. But now, all of these files, and I go in this app directory and there's more exceptions, policies, providers. Yeah, this is kind of overwhelming at first. Here's the thing to remember. You don't have to learn all of this at once. You can learn the basics, which are incredibly intuitive, and then as you build more complex projects, you can learn about new things like listeners or jobs or policies. You don't need to know about any of these to start though. All right, the first step on your journey, I hope you're working along, is to go into the HTTP directory down to routes. As you might have guessed, this is where we describe how we want to route any incoming request. Now, if we scroll down, you'll see that you have two different sections here. We have our web-specific routes and then this section at the top. We're going to get into that in a bit, but you know what? Keep it simple. Just do this for the time being. All right, so notice how readable Laravel makes this. It looks like we have this route class, and we say, okay, when the user makes a GET request to the home page, then I want to trigger this function right here. Now, you'll find that we can tackle this in two ways depending upon what size of project you're making. For little things, this is really useful. Just pass an anonymous function, or we call this a closure in PHP, and then you're good to go. For more complex projects, you might be familiar with the concept of controllers, in which case you might say, when we have a request to the home page, load the, how about pages controller at home. The only difference between these two is in this example, we handle it inline, so to speak. And in the second example, we load a dedicated class to process the routes. All right, we'll get to that one in a bit. Let's stick with this for now. So it looks like we're loading a view. What is a view? Think of the view as what the end user sees. So when they load your page and they see a logo at the top and they see a list of posts or some text or anything like that, well, you're going to use your view to define that structure. So to start, just think of it as your HTML, but we can also add bits of PHP within it as well when it's appropriate. So we're loading a view called welcome, but where do we store views? Well, we put those in the resources directory. So here at the top, assets, that will be where you put your CSS or your Sass or your less, any preprocessor you might want. Next, our views directory, there it is, welcome.blade.php. Now, if you've ever used another framework, you might know that you have to type out the full file name there. But with Laravel, it's not necessary. And really, if you think about it, this is kind of gross to write. Isn't that cleaner? Of course it is. And you're going to find with this framework, it very much emphasizes simplicity and clarity, and of course, convention over configuration. Okay, so if we take a look at this welcome page, we have a bit of inline CSS, since of course you would delete this in real life. And then we have Laravel 5. Okay, so I want to see this in the browser. How do we do that? Well, take a look at this. I will switch back to the terminal and run PHP Artisan. And what's this? Well, Laravel's Artisan utility, think of that as Laravel's command line component. It gives you a number of commands to do any number of things. For example, if you want to boot up a server on the fly, then you can run PHP Artisan serve. Lots of things. We can clear our cache. We can generate any number of files like a model or a controller. I'm going to teach you about all of these things. So again, don't be overwhelmed, one step at a time. We're going to start with that first command, PHP Artisan serve. And here we go. So let's take a look. And it works. We see our welcome page. Now, if I switch back though, take a look at this. Within my routes file, if I wanted to, I could even return a simple string, and Laravel will convert that to a response. So I could say, hi there. And if I come back and refresh, there it goes. Okay, so now let's finish up by creating a custom route. How about something as simple as the About page? Okay, pause the video, do it on your own, and see if you can get it to work. Okay, route, when the user makes a GET request to About, or if you want, you can leave off that /. It's implied. Well, we're going to trigger this closure here, where I will return. Well, first, let's start with a string like we did before. Does that make sense? Let's try it out. go to About, and we get our About page. But yeah, not overly real world. We're probably going to have a view. So I can say return view about. Now, this translates to us basically saying, Laravel, look in your resources views directory for a file called about.blade.php. But now you may not want to put everything within the views directory. You might want to create nested folders as well. For example, maybe you want these sorts of pages like about and contact. Those are sort of like static pages. Well, maybe you want that within a pages directory. How would we specify that? Well, in Laravel, we use a dot notation. So we could say pages dot about. Or in fact, we could do pages slash. The period is just a quick substitution to make it look just a little more object-oriented, a little bit cleaner. Okay, let's try this out. So within our views directory, we'll create a new folder called pages. And now within there, a new file called about.blade.php. Now, on that note, if you're curious about this extension Blade, that is Laravel's templating engine. And you'll learn all about that, and you're going to grow to love it. So for the time being, let's just copy this over, and we'll say About page here. Okay, I'm going to switch back to Chrome, give it a refresh, and now you've created your first route and your first view. Excellent work.